Yo guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you guys all had a good trading week last week, and if you didn't, then hopefully this week will be better. So I've just jumped on today to do my pre-market forecast for the week commencing the 18th of October. So hopefully you guys can get some insight into what I'm looking out for in this coming week. So I hope you guys enjoy. I'm going to be forecasting these 7 pairs here, starting with USD CHF. So let's just get started. So USD CHF, we've got a break of structure to the high here, and then another break of structure to the high. Now this break came from here, which has now been violated with this wick, and then the original break came from this order block down here. Now this order block here, it did actually have imbalance which wasn't filled, so as I mentioned in previous weeks, I was pretty much waiting for price to come back to this area. Now I would have taken buys out of there if the opportunity presented itself, which I didn't manage to get. But now that we've seen price tap back down into here, what I'm really expecting is that price will continue higher out of this impulsive order block on the daily. So we've already tapped into this order block for buys on the daily. So I'm expecting that it's just going to continue higher now and break the daily structure up here, ideally. So I'm already in a trade here based on that thesis, and I've got my trail stop loss here, so we'll see what happens with that trade. But for me, I'm expecting buys from this area down here and then potentially going up to really break this daily structure altogether. Now looking at the 2 hour though, if we look at what happened before we reached this area, we've actually got this impulsive nature here coming out of this order block here, which is clearest on the 15-minute, where we've got a clear imbalance. So that there is a clear supply zone. So I would expect some type of reaction from it, whether it's just, a small pullback and then we continue higher, or if we're looking at just potentially price not following through with the thesis that I built from the daily, and we will just get the full reversal from that point. So that's definitely a possibility as well. But what I'm expecting on USD CHF is that we're just going to buy up from this point. Now, whether it goes straight away from this reaction or whether we get a deeper reaction and then it goes, either way would make sense. So for me, hopefully, obviously my trade will just keep going. But if not, then I'd still definitely be interested in a reaction deeper into this order block to then buy to still break the daily structure. But also on the smaller time frame, I will be watching price's reaction to this area because I do think sells out of this area is a valid trading opportunity. So potentially, depending on exactly what happens as we react into this area, I may take sells coming out of it. But yeah, let's see what happens with USD CHF. So my overall forecast, what I think is most likely to happen, is that we're going to buy up out of this area here to eventually break the structure up here. And then on the smaller time frames, what's possible that could happen is that whether we go straight there or bounce off here and then go there, when we get to this area here, we potentially could see the sells coming into the market, and then how far that will go is anybody's guess really. So that's why I'll be open to potentially also taking sells when we reach this area, depending on my price action. So this is all going to be in a written forecast for you guys in the video description. So if you guys just want to check the written forecast, then click the link in the description. And if you enjoy these forecasts or you want to see any more videos from me or any videos about my Forex journey, then please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon if you want to get notified. Every subscription really does help my channel, guys, so I'm super grateful if you guys subscribe. Alright, so moving on to Usdjpy. So Usdjpy is pretty simple right now really. What we've got is break structure to the high on the daily, break structure to high on the daily, so it's a clear bull bias on Usdjpy. Now, in the sense of where this last daily break of structure came from, it really came from down here. Now, that's 300 pips away. I mean, you know, the more refined areas are more than 300 pips away from the current price. So, whilst technically, if price does come back down here, I will be interested in a buy. I wouldn't expect price to come back here anytime soon. I mean, if it does come back down here, I'd expect it to be quite corrective and probably take like at least a week really to get back down there. So for me, while I've marked on this area as a potential area to buy from, it's not something that I'm really expecting to be taking part in anytime soon. What I think is more realistic in terms of continuing buys on Usdjpy is this area here. So if we look at the most recent break of structure on the 4 hour, it really comes from down here. And for me, I actually think it comes from this wick because this wick grabs liquidity below this wick and then we take off. So you still got the liquidity manipulations going on in this candle here, and then this is where price really just starts to take off from. So for me, continuing this USD/JPY buy structure on the higher time frame, ideally price is going to come back down to this 4-hour order block, and then I'll look to take it out of there. Now, if you did want to just take the trade as a limit order, then I'd probably want to have my stop loss still below the actual 4-hour low. But for me personally, I'll wait until price gets here, and then I'll try to take a lower time frame entry and get a smaller stop loss so I can get a bigger risk to reward. Now, what's also very possible, given the impulsive nature of the price action here on USDJPY, is that we don't really see a big pullback, and what we get is just this continuation higher. So I'll definitely be keeping my eyes open during the week for opportunities to buy on the lower time frame, because in such aggressive price action, there's really no reason why price has to come back all that way. It can easily just continue going. So USDJPY, what I'm forecasting is either a straight up continuation to the high or a retracement back down here, and then potentially looking at continuing this buy move from this area down here. Alright, so moving on to Euro USD. So Euro USD is a pretty simple structure really right now. We've got our daily high here, daily low here. We've broken structure on the daily twice. So what we'd expect is a third break structure on the daily to be incoming. Now looking at the 4 hour, we've actually had an imbalance there, which has now been filled here with these candles. And we have now reacted essentially off the daily point of interest. So this daily area up here, which is where we were looking at selling from, we've now reacted from it. But we're still pretty close to it, so there's plenty of opportunity to still be getting involved in a move, some type of move going down here to then break the structure. But what I'm really forecasting on Euro USD is that price is now going to start selling off from this area. So I'll be looking for sell opportunities from either further up in this area, or if price has already started moving away from it, then I'll be looking at something like this to sell off. So that's what I'm looking for in Euro USD next week. I can't really see any buy opportunities right now. I really am pretty confident in the sell thesis. Now, if price did violate the structure and then do something like that, maybe we'll get a long out of there. But that's not happened yet, and there's no point forecasting something like that to happen until we see actual evidence of it. So right now, I'm just bearish on the euro dollar, and I'm expecting price could either just sell off straight from this structure that's being formed here, or it might just tap higher into this order block, maybe move into this wick over here before actually eventually selling off. So we could get something like that. But either way, Euro dollar, I'm going to be keeping my eyes out for sell opportunities which are originating from this area here and targeting this low here to break the structure again. So pound dollar, the situation's a bit more complex than it is on euro dollar. So with pound dollar, last week I forecasted that we get sells out of this daily high here. Now what's happened? We haven't really had them sells come through yet. What we've actually had is price poke above it, but then fail to close above it, and we've actually had the close of the candle back inside this daily range. So the daily range is still from here to here right now, and until this daily range is broken with a candle closure, I'm not going to anticipate that price is going to continue higher as such. So for me, because we're still in this overall order block which caused that break of structure, I'm still expecting that most likely price is going to start selling off from this area. So hopefully what we can see at the start of the week is that we'll just see price violate back through the 1 hour structure and then start to sell off from something like that. And for me, that would be the ideal situation with GU, and then we're following the daily structure to create new lows on the daily time frame. However, that said, I'm not going to ignore that we have actually poked above it. So while this wick here, it could be a liquidity grab, it could also just be essentially a violation of the structure. So in that sense, it's perfectly plausible for price to just continue upwards. Now, looking at where price could continue upwards from, if we look at the 4 hour structure, our last break of structure on the 4 hour was here, and that originated from this area down here. So in terms of the first place that we should be looking for buys from, it's got to be this order block here on the 4 hour, which caused the last break of structure. So GU, I'm also going to be looking for buys here out of this 4 hour structure. Now that actually has as well some confluence, because on the 1 hour we have this break of structure here, then price returns to that point to actually mitigate this area here, and then what we've got is this area which actually causes the next break of structure has a big imbalance above it. So I do actually think this is quite a high confluence space to be looking to buy GU from, but still we have to consider the overall daily bias is still for sells. So whilst it does look really nice there for a buy, I'm still overall expecting sells to come through until we get a daily closure above this high. But yeah, so GU this week, I'm looking at two opportunities going into the week. I'm looking at any sell opportunity which presents to basically take price lower to eventually break this structure down here. But then I'm also going to be watching how does price react off this whole order block, and specifically off this candle here on the 1 hour, because if we do start to see a reaction for that, a bullish reaction, I will 100% be getting in, because that order block there for buys, it is quite a high confluence order block. So let's see what happens on GU, but we've got one overall buying opportunity here, and then we can also be open to taking sell opportunities in line with the overall daily structure which has been presented. So moving on to GJ, very similar situation to what we saw in UJ in fairness, just a bit more impulsive. So on the daily time frame for GJ, we've just broken this structure very impulsively. We're trapped in this range for a long time, from July until the start of October. And then last week we've just violated the range very aggressively. So really now, due to the impulsive nature that we're seeing here, what I'm anticipating is just a continuation of buys to the upside. We can see here that last time we had the impulsive nature on GJ, it just kept going. Eventually 1500 pips on, well, more than 1500 pips for the whole move. So who's to really say where this impulsive move is going to end? So in that sense, I'm just looking at continuing buys. Now, like I mentioned in UJ, a move like this, it doesn't necessarily pull back to an order block. It'll just keep going, keep going. So you've got to keep your eye out on the lower time frames, and especially on like the 1 hour, the 15 minute, for opportunities to basically buy it up during London Open, New York Open. So what I'll be looking at on GJ is I'll probably really just be expecting it to continue pretty aggressively, and then I'll hopefully manage to get an entry into something like that if we get that next break of structure coming through. But in terms of what we've got right now, what I can see is these two potential points for price to come back to before continuing higher. So we've got this move here, which generated liquidity. It's also got a small imbalance, and then it's a similar story here. We've also got a small move down, which caused a break of structure, which also has imbalance. So on GJ, if price does make it back here, then I'd be looking at the lower time frames, looking to get involved in a buy from either of these areas. I think both areas are valid buying opportunities. So if we do get the retracement on GJ, then I'm expecting to buy out of either this 2 hour point of interest or this 2 hour point of interest. If we don't get much for retracement, which is perfectly plausible, then we may just continue higher and higher as the week goes on. And in that case, I'll be looking for entry opportunities around London and New York Open to just continue to go higher. Alright, so moving on to AU. So AU, what we've had is this break of structure here. So the break of structure broke this low here and originated from this high. Now what we can see is that we had a big imbalance there, so it did make a lot of sense really for price to come back up here to fill this imbalance. Now in terms of the daily, we have filled the imbalance now. We've even tapped the open of that wick there. So what I'm really expecting is that price will now react off this area and just start moving down to potentially break the low, but at least really to touch this area here where we've actually got imbalance in the other direction, and it's not really been filled yet. So what I'd expect is a swing from a high here down to the low here, because we're coming from this order block up here and we've got this imbalance down here. So we've also got liquidity below this area. So that's two reasons why price should revisit the low. And we've also got a cause in the sense that it's now in an order block for sells at the high. What we've also had already is break of structure on the hourly. So that indicates potentially that price is now ready to start moving down, start breaking structures to the downside, and then following through with that forecasted daily move for this entire impulsive leg down here. So that could be a nice move. If it does play out, you're looking at like 250, 300 pips before we reach that area, at which point we can see whether or not we react off it or if we just smash through it. So for me, on AU, I'm really just expecting sells coming out of this area here, up here. Now, what I am also aware of though, and I'm not going to shut myself off to it, is that on the 4 hour on AU, we have obviously been breaking structures to the high. Now, in terms of we expect the price to come back up here before selling off, like obviously to do that, we'd have to be breaking structures to the high. So even though we're breaking structures to the high on the 4 hour, still makes sense to me that we're just now going to start selling off, because the daily time frame is more relevant than the 4 hour in terms of understanding where the market's going. But that said, the 4 hour order flow, it's not going to be violated until this candle here, until price closes below it. Now what we can see on the 15-minute here is that we've got a very clear refinement of that 4 hour order block, and we've got imbalance there. What we've also got is that this candle here mitigates this candle here, which was the last sell volume, which caused the previous break of structure. So what I'm really interested in on AU is also how price will react off this point here. So I'd be happy to potentially take buys out of there if price does get down there and then we start seeing a bullish reaction, especially if it's around a key time of day, London, New York session, then I'd be happy to look for buys out of there. But still, overall, based on the daily time frame, I'm looking for sells out of this high here. And whether the sells come straight away, following through the 1 hour break of structure, or if we retrace higher, maybe for a day or two, before then selling off from higher up in the range. For me, either or, I'm happy to take sells on AU, regardless whether it's coming from this area that's already started to develop, or if we get some new structure which develops from higher up, and then we start taking sells, maybe somewhere like that. But let's see what happens with AU. So my overall forecast on the daily is for sells from there. On the 4 hour, I'm aware that there's an opportunity to buy from down here. So let's just see what we get and see what opportunities present this week on AU. So finally, Nzdusd USD, not really the cleanest pair at the minute for me. So unlike on AU, this area here wasn't a low, so we're still actually in this overall bullish range from this point down here to this point up here. Now, what we can see within that bullish range though is we've still got this imbalance, just like on AU, and price hasn't really filled the imbalance yet. It has tapped for 50%, so it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to come all the way down, but really we've still not filled the imbalance properly. Now, what I was looking at last week was a sell out of this area. That obviously didn't happen, and price has just smashed through it. But what I also identified last week is that up here, this was a point of mitigation and a liquidity grab. So if we really think of following the mitigation on this pair, well, the last mitigation came up here, so it would really make sense for price to come back up here, mitigate again this mitigation order block, and then continue down. So when you look at it on the 12 hour, what we've actually got is a break of structure on the low here, which originates from this area up here, which is also the last point of mitigation for the bearish order flow on the 4 hour. So for me, I do think this area here is a valid area to sell from, and I'll be interested in how price reacts off this area. If we start to see the bearish order flow coming in pretty much from within this area, then I won't really see a reason why I can't take that trade. So for me personally, sells coming out of this area make a lot of sense because it's a continuation of this overall bearish order flow. But what I'm not going to ignore is the fact that we've been breaking structure in a bullish manner on the 4 hour, and we've now got a retrace here which we could just continue off easily. So if we look at this, I believe the best refinement of it is actually the 4 minute. So what we've got is this small imbalance here on the 4 minute, and then we've got the wick and this candle here. So if we are going to continue bullish, the first place where I'm going to be looking for buys out of is the 4 minute refinement here of the 4 hour order block. And then whether then buyers will start to reverse when we get into the 12 hour order block, which I discussed, or whether the 12 hour order block isn't relevant and what we'll see is just a straight up continuation to the high. I mean, I can't predict that. All I can predict is the opportunities that I'm seeing. So on NU this week, I'm looking at buying out of this area here to continue the overall bullish move, or I'm looking at sells out of this area here for a higher time frame reversal of this bullish move to then take price much lower. Alright guys, so I hope you've enjoyed this week's forecast, and like I said before, there's going to be a link in the description below. So if you guys want to see the written version, then just click that link in the description. And if you guys enjoy these forecasts and want to know my view each week, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and then you'll see my videos every time I upload. Also, I do just want to say with regard to forecasting, because some people, and I used to think like someone makes a forecast and then they're saying this is what's going to happen in the market. Like, I don't marry my forecast, guys, and I'd say to you guys, don't marry your forecast, because all this is just mapping potential opportunities which could happen in the market, so that going into the week I've got sort of an expectation for what I'm seeing in the market, and if these opportunities start to play out, then I can be more confident in taking the actual trades. But at the end of the day, we don't know what's going to happen in the market each week until it actually happens. So whilst I have laid out here like generally one or two opportunities for each pair, I'm still not necessarily saying that that's what's going to happen. What I'm saying is that based on the information available from the chart at this moment in time, that's the opportunities that I'm seeing as potentially available. So all the forecast is just identifying possibilities based on the current information available. If the current information available changes, for example, we get some more breaks of structure, some different order blocks developing, then my expectations of the market are going to change with that new information. So it's really important, guys, that you don't get too attached to forecasting. It's a really important process to forecast so that you're prepared for the next week in the market. But at the same time, you don't want to get too attached to what you forecasted on the Sunday if on Tuesday or Wednesday the situations change dramatically. Like, for example, on NU here, if this order flow invalidation point gets broken, then I'm not going to be looking for sells anymore. So like I say, this is just a forecast based on the current information, and we'll see how the week actually unfolds, and I'll act on that accordingly. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you guys have a good trading week and trade safe, guys.